So John Bolton, the chief neocon running our foreign policy, he was shockingly asked a decent question on CNN by Tap Jaker on the issue of Venezuela, and his answer is, I don't even have a word for it. You watch and find out for yourself.
Let's turn to South America. You tweeted on Friday about Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, quote, "Those who continue to support a dictator that violates human rights and steals from the starving should not be allowed to walk around with impunity," unquote. Just as a matter of course, and this didn't start with the Trump administration, the United States supports any number of dictators who violate human rights, including the leaders of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. Should those who support those dictators not be allowed to walk around with impunity?
I've put out roughly 150 tweets on Venezuela. This is a new experiment in public diplomacy. The fact is that we are trying to rally support for the peaceful transition of power from Maduro to Juan Guaido, whom we recognize as president. And I think since most of my tweets also come out in Spanish because we want to reach the Latin American audience in particular, that a lot of people, especially on the political left in the hemisphere and around the world, now understand that the failed experiment of Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro needs to end. So I'd like to see as broad a coalition as we can put together to replace Maduro, to replace the whole corrupt regime. That's what we're trying to do.
Well, certainly Maduro is nobody that I would defend in any way. But
well, that's good to hear.
But do you not see that the United States support for other brutal dictators around the world undermines the credibility of the argument you're making?
No, I don't think it does. I think it's separate. And I think, look, in this administration, we're not afraid to use the phrase Monroe Doctrine. This is a country in our hemisphere. It's been the objective of American presidents going back to Ronald Reagan to have a completely democratic hemisphere. I mentioned back at the end of last year that we're looking very much at the troika of tyranny, including Cuba and Nicaragua, as well as Maduro. Part of the problem in Venezuela is the heavy Cuban presence, 20 to 25,000 Cuban security officials by reports that have been in the public. This is the sort of thing that we find unacceptable, and that's why we're pursuing these policies.
Okay, that was incredible. There was not a split second of digesting the point and reflecting on it and then responding to it. Not a second of reflection, not a second of introspection. It was just like, okay, you say we have to go after Maduro because he's a dictator. And he says, Tap Jaker says, the U.S. supports a tremendous number of dictators. So do you not understand how you've just undermined your own argument and almost exposed that that's not your real point? And his response is, first he dodges the question. Then when Tap Jaker reiterates it, he goes, no, it's separate. What do you mean? And then his explanation has nothing to do with the point. No, it's separate. Okay, go on to explain. He doesn't say it. He doesn't explain it. That's incredible. It's like, in order to support his philosophy of neoconservatism, interventionism, and imperialism, he uses anti-logic. There's nothing there. And in fact, the part that got under my skin the most is probably when he says, we need to create a democratic hemisphere. But wait. You just said how it doesn't undermine the argument of toppling dictators when we support so many dictators. And then you go on to say, which is why we need to create a democratic hemisphere. That makes no sense. That's a contradiction. You're saying, no, it's cool that we support dictators, which is why we need to support a democratic hemisphere. You just said you support dictators. So you're, by definition, not supporting a democratic hemisphere. You're saying, I support dictators. So notice what they do. They just use these flowery words to mean whatever they want it to mean. So in John Bolton's mind, democratic just means U.S. Allied. So Saudi Arabia, democratic. Israel, democratic. The most brutal authoritarian regime you could possibly think of, democratic. As long as you're an ally of us, democratic. Democratic enough. So he sees no contradiction there. He sees it as, like, what do you mean? I think we should have a democratic hemisphere, which is why I support dictators in our hemisphere. Dude, that's insanity. It's just rank imperialism. That's what it is. And the other point of that is, we need to create a democratic hemisphere. Well, again, you're saying by supporting dictators that we support in our hemisphere. And also, how the fuck do you just still assert that you casually have the right to control other sovereign countries? They're sovereign countries. In other words, it violates international law for you to fucking try to control who their leaders are. On principle alone, you shouldn't be controlling other countries, other sovereign countries, who their leader is. I mean, this is... And by the way, he just left you a hint that Cuba and Nicaragua are next. He said it. And he tweeted about Nicaragua the other day, and I was like, uh-oh, here we go again. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. Whatever regime even slightly questions U.S. interests in Western capital, tick-tock, bitch, they're coming for you. And they're going to try to topple you and put in a Western capital-friendly leader. That's what it is. So Nicaragua, Cuba, they're going old school Cold War style. We're going to try to topple everybody who's not aligned with us. And it is disgusting. It is gross. It's criminal. And John Bolton, by the way, should be in prison. Should be in The Hague. I mean, this is the guy who is responsible, at least in part, for the war on terror and the illegal offensive invasion of Iraq, a country that didn't attack us, and the destruction of that country, the minimum 200,000 civilians that are dead as a result of it, and the $7 trillion wasted there by 2053. So, the fact that he's even considered a reasonable voice and somebody who you should interview and hear out, I mean, I know he's in the administration, but the fact that he's even in the administration, this is all evidence, direct evidence of how corrupt and broken our system is and how the law doesn't apply to rich, powerful people.